Hello YouTube, how's it going? This is the crossover and I'm back with another video. Today is going to be another one of my individual scouting reports for the 2022 NBA draft. And in today's video, we're going to be taking a look at Nebraska guard Bryce McGowens. So without any further delay, let's get straight into the video. Moving on, we do have some stats to cover regarding Bryce. He is 19 years old, stands at about 6'7", weighs about 180 pounds, and has about a 6'9" wingspan. Solid physical profile. You wish that wingspan was a bit longer. The fact that it is 6'9" is a bit, it's a bit worrisome. When you watch him on court, you do notice that he doesn't have, like an extremely plus wingspan. I mean, technically, a 6'9" wingspan is a plus wingspan since it is bigger than his height, but still, you'd prefer to be a lot bigger, considering that he is, a lanky guard, right? You'd like to see him have longer arms than he does have, but decent overall physical profile. I think that those 180 pounds that he carries, I think that's definitely something he could work on, and we will talk more about how his weight affects him in different aspects of his game later on in the video. But all right, physical profile for Bryce. I think some areas just leave a little bit to be desired. However, on the court, where it has been a bit up and down for Bryce this year, for Nebraska. This obviously, he is a freshman. This is his first year. He was a 5-star guard coming in under Fred Hoiberg. Playing for Fred Hoiberg this season for Nebraska, where he has averaged 16.8 points, 5.2 rebounds, and 1.4 assists per game. Solid stat line, nothing to be ashamed about or anything of that sort. But then when you take a look at the efficiency numbers, they're not great. He has a 45.3 effective field goal percentage, which is not all that good, to be honest. Certain parts of his game kind of carry the others. In certain areas of on the court, he's just extremely inefficient, and in other parts, he's all right. That 83.1% free throw percentage is very solid. I really like his free throw shooting. It's one of the biggest strengths of his game. Again, something that we will talk about in the strengths aspect of the video. And it's definitely a strength that I think he should focus on, and part of his game that I think he should empower, whether that be at Nebraska next year or whether he's playing in the NBA next season, right? And he also has a 36.8% three-point attempt rate, which is pretty solid. Again, a player like Bryce, I think I would like to see him shoot more threes, considering his archetype of player. We'll talk more about that again later in detail in other parts of the videos. But it's a solid three-point attempt rate. I definitely like to see it be a little bit higher. However, not bad. And then also when you take a look at the usage rate, he has a 27.2% usage rate, which leads the entire Nebraska team. So he had the ball in his hands plenty of times this season for Nebraska. Moving on to some of the strengths of Bryce McGowen as a prospect. First up, I want to talk about his finishing, which in my opinion is the best tangible or the best part of his skill set right now. I think he's one of the most gifted finishers in this class. I know that the percentages aren't pretty. He is shooting 56.2% at the rim on a healthy diet, about 162 attempts at the rim, which is he's amongst the league leaders in the Big Ten at attempts at the rim. So again, the percentages aren't great, but again, it's more of the tape and the eye test that tells you that he's just such a gifted finisher right now. And I know that he has certain physical limitations that again we'll talk about in the weaknesses part of the video. That wingspan isn't great, and overall he's just a very raw prospect right now. But what he's shown as a finisher is extremely promising. He's shown the ability to finish with both hands, which through my through my evaluation process of all these prospects this year, finding a player that's a gifted finisher with either hand, that's able to finish in multiple ways with either hand, it's rare. It's almost, you don't see that like really at all. And for Bryce McGowens, excuse me, Bryce Young. But I was thinking about my Giants earlier, but for Bryce McGowens to be able to finish with both hands at this age is just so impressive. And he's able to finish in a multitude of ways, as I just mentioned, whether that be scoop layups, up and unders, power dribbles, right? That one dribble, plant on 2 feet and rise up, right? He's able to finish and adjust through contact. His body control is very good. He's able to again take contact and finish with either hand. You know, that little hook, not necessarily hook, but like that little floater where players like to, you know, adjust and then they kind of finish over the top, right? You know, that's a move that Bryce McGowens has in his bag. And he's able to do it, and he's able to finish through contact effectively, which is something that I really, really like about his game. And I feel that this is his biggest strength. And as I kind of touched on in the stats category with his free throw shooting, he's also a very, very impressive free throw shooter. I know that the shooting numbers aren't impressive overall, but he is shooting, again, 83.1% at the line, again, on a healthy amount of shots at the charity strike. And that's just such, it's just so encouraging to see him be such a good free throw shooter. And again, as I mentioned, I think they go hand in hand, because I think he really needs to play into being a finisher at the rim, because it's only going to mean more free throw attempts for him. The more he attacks, is aggressive at getting contact and getting to the line. It's only going to be easy points for him. And I feel like that's something that he really needs to hone in, and something that he really needs to focus on. Again, is he a perfect finisher right now? No. There are some things that he needs to work on. Again, I'll touch on those in the weaknesses part of the video, but overall, I think his finishing is the best part of his skill set, and he's a very gifted finisher. And I think as he gets older, as he gets stronger, it's only going to further, it's only going to improve from here on out. Moving on to the shooting aspect of Bryce McGowens' game, even though the percentages aren't great, he's shooting 27.4% on threes, and he's taken 146 of them. That's awful. That's ghastly. I'm not going to lie. I'm not going to sugarcoat it. It's an awful percentage, but mechanics are very solid. He's a much better shooter than what the numbers suggest. Very solid mechanics. Again, guide hand is great. Gets decent elevation. I think the release is a question. Again, that's something that we'll talk about in the weaknesses. But again, I think the shooting my hand is fine. Shooting pocket is something that I do have a question about. But overall, you know, the mechanics themselves, are very solid with Bryce. I don't necessarily see any, you know, clear hitches. I think he could hold the shot a little bit, but overall, I think the mechanics are very solid. What I really like about his shooting, is that he's a very confident shooter. He's gonna let it fly. He has range on his 3-point shot, and then again, as I just said, he's gonna let it fly, especially if he gets hot. If he hits 2 in a row, he's liable to take a 3 from the volleyball line. And you know, I really like that confidence. You know, even despite the fact that he's shooting 27%, he's still willing to let them fly. And I think that's very encouraging for him moving forward, considering the fact that he does have very solid mechanics, and he's just very confident in his shot, and he also has a pretty quick trigger on his release. He's on his shots, he's able to get them up pretty fast. And what I really like about Bryce McGowens, even though I wouldn't necessarily say really I like about him, I'm not the highest on his self-creation as opposed to other people, but it's legitimate. He has real upside of being a self-creator at the NBA level. Even though I will talk about the handle later on, I think that it's a bit loose right now, but overall, he still has a plethora of different moves that he can get to. He knows which spots on the court he wants to get to, and overall, you don't see too many freshmen making moves the way Bryce McGowens can make, even if he's not all that consistent at this point in his development. And again, even though it does need some work, you see the makeup of a potential score. And again, he's just very raw right now. There's plenty of different parts of his game that he needs to work on, but again, you really love to see that the instincts and just the overall feel as a self-creator that Bryce McGowens has. And I think that he has a legitimate upside at being a self-creator at the next level. And then the final part of his game that I really like offensively is that he sees the floor very well. He's not necessarily a good passer right now, but he's able to see the floor extremely well and make different reads. Moving on to some of many of the concerns that I have regarding Bryce McGowen at this point in time. I have a lot of them, so I think I'm just going to rattle them off pretty quick. First up, I just want to talk about his vertical athletic abilities. He's just not much of a vertical athlete right now, which I think that plays in part. I think it negatively affects his ability to finish at the rim. Even though I stated that he is a very gifted finisher, I think the percentages would be even better if he was a better vertical athlete. He just can't really get off the ground like that, and I think it definitely affects him in terms of, you know, bigger shot blockers just being able to send his shots flying, because he's just not able to really elevate off the ground like that, and he was still clearly adjusting and getting a feel for the college game, right? But overall, it negatively impacts, in my opinion, his ability to finish at the rim. So I think even though he is a very gifted finisher, I think him not being, you know, that vertical athlete definitely hurts him. In terms of, you know, as you just saw it right there, he just tried to dunk on and Walker Kessler. He just came nowhere close. Like, I mean, look at it. He barely gets off the. I mean, he didn't even really get off the ground like that. He cocked it back, and he still wasn't, you know, all the way up there, right? And this is even evident on fast breaks. I believe it was against Purdue, where he had like a wide open layup in transition, like wide open. It was a steal, wide open layup, and I believe it was their guard. I'm not sure his name off the top of my head. Purdue has that 5'9", 5'10" guard that they have. Just blocked him. And Bryce McGowens barely got off the floor. We're talking about a 6'7" guard here, 5-star guard. You know, even if you're raw and adjusting to the game, you know, that adjusting to the college game, that just can't happen. You know, you can't just have a layup blocked in transition, especially by a player that's significantly shorter than you, right? Like, that's just, it shouldn't happen. It just shouldn't happen, period. And I think he would have some more defensive potential if he did offer, you know, that weak side rim protection that some guards do offer. But, you know, that's just not Bryce McGowens right now. And you know, some people are like, oh, well, you can improve physically, this and that. But I think for the most part, players are what they are physically. You know, you don't see players really take that next step in terms of being, you know, athletes at the next level. So the fact that he's not much of a vertical threat definitely lowers his ceiling for me, just because, you know, he's not going to be able to truly finish. You know, you look at a player like Jaylen Brown, able to just get above the rim and finish over the trees, right? You look at a player like John Morant, same thing. You know, some of the exceptions are a player like Shea, but you know, for the most part, the best guard finishers are guys that are able to get above the rim, you know, a De'Aaron Fox and whatnot, and Bryce McGowens is simply nowhere near, you know, the vertical athletes that some of those guys are. So I'm a bit worried in that aspect. Moving on to another part of his game, it's just some of his shooting mechanics. You know, I stated that the mechanics are pretty smooth for the most part, but you know, there are some things about it that do concern me a bit that I think need to be fine tuned. The first part is just that his shooting pocket, it's a bit on the left side of his body, despite him being a right-handed shooter. So I'll just do it since I'm a lefty. He kind of shoots like this. Well, obviously, as I just stated, I'm a lefty, so it's reversed for me. But his shooting pocket is kind of on the righter side of his body, and I didn't really notice that at first. I believe I was on like my third game of his, and then I kind of noticed it on a spot up, and then I kind of had to rewind a couple times, and I was like, wait a second, is his shooting pocket a bit on the opposite side of his body? And then I kind of went back to some of the other games that I watched, some of his poor shooting performances, and I saw it, and I'm like, that's probably not a good sign. You know, that probably makes it awkward for him to kind of have to shoot from across his body. I mean, if it works for him, it works for him, but I think it would be a bit, I think it would be, he would be a lot more comfortable with you know, the shooting pocket being a little bit on the righter side of his body, on his dominant hand. Another part of his shooting mechanics that bother me a bit is just the release. It's a bit low, and I think that also plays in part of him being an inefficient self-creator right now, just because if the release is, I like lower releases for my guards so that they can get up quick shots, right? So that because the guards are quick, like a player like Kennedy Chandler has a low release. That's fine, because Kennedy Chandler is 6 foot. He needs that as quick of a release as possible in order to get shots up over these big men, right? Because Kennedy Chandler 6 foot, he's going to be playing against 6'4", 6'5", at the very least, height-wise players, right? A player like Bryce McGowens, you know, one more my taller guards, wings, you know, I like them to have a higher release simply because they don't have to make up for that height difference, right? So I think Bryce McGowens' release could be a little bit higher, and I think that plays in part again to some of his inefficiencies as a self-creator. So I feel like both of these things overall kind of contribute to his numbers just being a bit off, and you know, I think that the eye test kind of matches that. Like, even if you're not looking specifically, even if you're just an average watcher and you're just looking at Bryce McGowan shoot, and you're not really examining his mechanics, I think it's pretty obvious that, like, just the eye test tells you that he's not like the smoothest of shooters, right? Like, that it just doesn't look perfectly 100% great, right? And I think, you know, it's these are two of the big reasons why. It's just the shooting pocket location, and just his release is just not all that high. So I think those are two things that he definitely needs to work on, skill set wise. And another part of his offensive game that I really struggle with is his handle. You know, as I stated before, he's shown that he has a repertoire of moves that he gets to. It's just a matter of it being consistent. Like there's a number of times where he'll just try to do too much with the ball and he'll just end up losing it. I've seen a number of different players pick his pockets because he tends to play with the ball a little bit too much. Like it's just like make a move and go. Like a player that was kind of similar in that aspect is a player like Tari Eason, where earlier in the season he was kind of just playing with the ball too much. But then as the season went along, he was using that deep bag that he has to just kind of make like quick effective moves, right? And I think a player like Bryce McGowens really could take a page out of that out of Tari Eason's book in that aspect of just being he has a bag of moves that he can get to, just use them selectively and effectively, right? It's not about doing the craziest move. It's just about doing what's most effective in that moment. Like just take what the defense gives you and make a move, right? And I think that that's definitely something that Bryce has to learn as he gets older, and hopefully he will. The talent is there, a 5-star prospect and whatnot, even though I do have, the physical concerns, but overall, just, the handle, it's just a bit loose right now, and I hope that it'll get better as he grows. I feel like that's a huge swing skill for him, is that handle. He also really struggles to attack strong side defenders. Like if he's attacking a lane and a defender is there kind of in strong side and then they kind of come down to help, he's done. He's turning the ball over. He's either gonna dribble the ball off his foot, outright lose the handle, or one of the two defenders is gonna pick it off. Pretty much every single time. Which again, it's not terrible because he was playing against Big Ten competition for a majority of the year, but overall, you still like to see that be better than it was, right? So I think the handle is something that it's gonna have to improve as time goes on. And another part of his overall self-creation that really, really bothers me, this one is like a big worry for me, is just he creates barely any separation on his self-created shots. Barely any separation. Back to that Penny Hardaway move that I mentioned earlier with Rutgers, where Caleb McConnell, the Big Ten Defensive Player of the Year, he got him with the move, and he stepped back, but he created almost little to no separation. Caleb McConnell was like right in between the free throw line and the 3-point line. Bryce McGowens barely steps back, and Caleb is able to adjust. He was kind of lost for a second, adjust, changes his direction, and is able to contest the shot. And Bryce McGowens had no chance of hitting that shot. And this happens a lot, where Bryce McGowens will hit a player, he just won't create any sort of separation, which just ends up in the shot just being heavily contested, and more than not, the shot ends up in a miss. And I think that this is a huge part of his game that he needs to work, like a huge part, because you can't be a self-creator and not create any separation. You look at the best self-creators, a player like Damian Lillard. Damian Lillard was struggling earlier on in the season because that little sidestep, that little hard dribble, plants with the left foot, that sidestep to the right that he loves to do. He wasn't creating as much separation as he usually does. It wasn't as quick as it usually is. So that's something that Bryce McGowens is definitely gonna have to work on. He's gonna have to work on being a more effective at creating space if he's going to be a self-creator at the next level. Like it's so important that he works on this, because if he was more effective at creating separation, even with the flaws in his shooting mechanics, I guarantee you his shooting percentages would be a lot better than what they were this season at Nebraska. Another part of his offensive game that I really don't like, that I mentioned before, is just the delivery on his passes. They're terrible. They're absolutely awful. But even though the vision is very encouraging and you like to see him, see the court, he just can't get the ball to where he wants to get it at this point in time, which it's not the biggest concern. It's definitely not my biggest concern that I have right now, as I've mentioned some pretty severe concerns that I have with him. But, I think it's something that will get better, hopefully, as time goes on. But I think Bryce McGowens, it's just, delivery just needs so much work, and there's just so many other parts of his game that also need work, that it's like, I don't know how much he'll really emphasize this part of his game, but I feel that hopefully as he goes on and he gets more adjusted to the NBA game when he gets there, and the game kind of slows down for him as he gets older, that it'll be something that hopefully develops. Moving on to the defensive side of the floor, where I really don't like Bryce at all. I'll be honest, he's awful defensively. I mean, we'll start off with his on-ball defense. As a point of attack defender, he's awful. Just awful right now. His footwork, wow, his footwork is bad, very, very bad. All it takes is a defender to make one move, and his feet are on the other side. Let's say a player is on the left side of the court, right? He's on the left side of the court. Bryce McGowens is in front of him, and he hits him with a drop cross, attacking on the right with his right hand towards the middle of the court, right? Once he hits Bryce with that drop cross, both of Bryce's feet move to the left side, so then Bryce is just completely out of his way, and his lateral quickness is all that great that it doesn't allow him to recover. Bryce McGowens it takes him a step to kind of like plant, get it, and it takes him that second to kind of get adjusted, and then go to contest and go to recover, right? And it's not encouraging, that's not good. Even though even though he's a freshman and whatnot, it's just that's bad. That's bad. The footwork has to be better than what it is. And I just really don't like that, the fact that he needs to work on his footwork, and the fact that his lateral quickness is leaves a lot to be desired, in my opinion. I don't like that. I really don't like that. And it's not like he's just this overwhelmingly long athlete, right? He's long and lanky, but he's not like, he doesn't have like this overwhelming, size to him, like a player like Mikal Bridges, or a player of that ilk, right? He doesn't have like that 7-foot wingspan. He's not like overly big when you see him on the court, right? And that's concerning. That's real concerning. Now, are there certain possessions where he stays in front of his man? Yes, but I think, in my opinion, they're far and few between compared to when he's just getting beat outright. And that's really bad, because you look at some other players and I'm like, all right, some of these other guards, some of these other wings, they'll be able to at least survive from day one, be adequate defenders or certain. But Bryce, I just don't see it. I just don't see him being a point of attack defender at the NBA level. Now, maybe he could prove me wrong, but just with lacking that burst and not being a good point of attack defender at all, it's very concerning. Then when you combine that with him not being a great strong side defender either, he doesn't really do a great job of poking at the ball or really stay his man. And the fact that he falls asleep a lot, especially as a weak side defender. When he's a couple passes away, he has to like split the court, he really falls asleep. Like, his man will go through screens, and Bryce will just be like dozing off or ball watching, and then he'll be like, oh crap, now I gotta run and contest my man's shot, right? And that happens a lot, and that's just not encouraging, right? Sometimes you'd like for a player to be like, okay, maybe he's not a great point of attack defender, but at least he has his help side defense that he could rely on to get minutes from day one at the NBA level. And I just don't see it with Bryce McGowens right now. But overall, Bryce, a guy who's definitely a long-term project. Has the potential to be a 3-level scorer, self-creating wing at the next level. Very gifted finisher, has self-creation tools, self-creation upside. There are certain things in his jump shot that he needs to work on, such as his shooting pocket, I think, could use some work, and his handle definitely needs to work. It's a bit inconsistent right now. His release, I think, could be a little bit higher, but the fact that he's not a great vertical athlete concerns me. Even if he is a great free throw shooter, I think he's going to be a solid spot up shooter from day one, but the defensive concerns are real, and he's not going to be able to rely on his defense to get minutes from day one as a wing, which is very concerning for me. So overall, I have Bryce McGowens as in the 20s right now and on my big board. Long-term project for whoever drafts him. I don't expect him to be a day one contributor at all, just because, again, he's not a good defender, and he has a lot of things to work out on the offensive side of the floor. But I'm not the biggest fan of Bryce McGowens. I've seen a lot of people that have him like really high on their big boards, and I just don't see it. But I do like his potential. He definitely needs a lot of work, but some of the physical limitations with his lateral quickness and his footwork and the fact that he's not a good vertical athlete and whatnot. And that wingspan, it's a bit concerning for me. I think that definitely limits his ceiling, and the fact that he's just a terrible defender also limits his ceiling for me. But solid player overall, and I think he could be a decent three-level scoring wing in his prime. And that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. I know this was a bit longer than my scouting reports usually have been, but Bryce was a player that I kind of took a lot of pride and a player that I did a lot of research on, just because I've seen such varying opinions on him. I've seen him number 1 on some boards. I've seen him top 6, 7 on some boards. So I really, really wanted to get to know Bryce as a prospect, like really, really get like a definitive opinion on him before I came out and made a video on him. So I know it's a bit longer than usual, but thank you if you made it this far. Let me know what you guys think about Bryce in the comments. Do you guys agree with me? Do you guys think he is, a lottery level talent? Do you guys think he's a second round talent, right? Let me know what you guys think about him in the comments and how he will translate from day one to the NBA, or what his ceiling looks like in the NBA. Let me know what you guys think about him in the comments. But aside from that, that's the end of the video, guys. Thank you so much for watching. Please subscribe if you haven't already. And if you have, please share it with a friend. Again, I want to keep growing the channel. But again, thank you so much for watching, guys, and peace. Have a blessed day.